Alright, shalom to the Israelite community. Man, I just finished watching a few little videos, man, about, the Israelite history and lost tribes. I'm always looking at the Israelite community to see the state of mind that our people in. And it's a mess still. After all this time, that Israelites refuse to wake up because, Israelites gravitate towards falsehood and untruth. That's what the Tanakh show, that how we, gravitate towards lies and so forth, and how, sensational history or lies, man, that an Israelite is comfortable with, and man, I was looking at some of the Israelites, man, that's still pushing it 10 lost tribes doctrine, and how that's false, man, and that you can clearly see that it wasn't no 10 lost tribes. But then they go back to the state of mind of an Israelite. That's like you got Israelites, under the title Black, Negro, African American, you know what I'm saying, and how that our folks, man, love lies, man. They still believe in Christmas, Easter, and they'll support that stuff and be happy with it and think that they doing something righteous, and that how that all that stuff was given to us during our captivity, and specifically on the plantation, that all the religions and everything that an Israelite believe in outside of Tanakh history gonna come from the slavery days. So it's still like you still a slave in a sense, and then I was thinking, man, how, the Israelite Brotherhood, man, we struggling, man, we trying to make it, and it's rough trying to get finances up, man. And I was thinking that, man, what if I was telling lies, man? What if I was teaching lies, man, like, Jesus is coming back to save us, and then I slide across the floor and spin around and tell lies based upon that, and able to quote the New Testament like a professor. Man, I say I'll be rich and wouldn't need anything, I'll be rich and wouldn't need nothing. I have the building that I want, and man, I have everything, that I'll just be just like the church, man, and be the best liar preacher up in there, But then, man, I say, no, man, I can't be like that, man, that I'd rather not have anything and teach the truth and show truth about our Israelite heritage than to sell out. Because we only here, man. You ain't gonna be on this earth forever, and you got to go back to Almighty Yah. So I'd rather go back with the truth about our Israelite heritage. And man, if I ain't got no finances, man, oh well. But at least I'm rich with the truth. You know what I'm saying? And that I have the truth, man, on my side. And this truth is easily to show. And it's just not my truth. It's the Tanakh truth. It's Yah's truth, But like I said, man, if I was teaching Christmas, man, if I celebrated Christmas and Easter and birthdays, and then told the Israelites that Jesus coming back to save you, and he died on the cross for your sins, telling them lies that was given to our people during the transatlantic slave trade, man. I'll probably have it made, man. Wouldn't need nothing, man. I wouldn't need anything. And that how, Israelites love to be lied to, and they support falsehood and doctrines that are not truth. You can't tell them that it ain't true because they blind, and they just, just like how our people was in the Tanakh history when Jeroboam brung that Egyptian religion and put it on the northern kingdom, and instead of embracing the Yah that our father Jacob, Isaac, and Abraham and Moses and them supported one Yah, that how them Israelites, man, just gravitated towards falsehood and embraced it. And then when I got to reading the book of Isaiah, he explaining just that, how the Israelites love lies and falsehood over truth, and how we like dishonesty and falsehood, and how we'll support falsehood and we'll support all the things that are wrong. Everything that's wrong, man, the Israelite gonna support it and help you out with it. But if it's the truth and trying to bring a person and try to bring out people to Yah, then it's gonna be almost like them prophets in the Tanakh. Man, that wasn't well accepted. They wasn't well accepted in the Israelite community. It's why we in destruction now and got an oppressor over us in a strange land. But you can't convince Israelites that this is wrong the way that we are living and that we supposed to be living a righteous life and living by Almighty Yah's word. But most Israelites they believe in demigods or the gods that was given to us during the slavery days, Jesus. Now that's like if I would say, hey, me and Jesus died for your sins and he coming back to save us. Man, the Israelite they get happy and he'll empty his pockets, to help you and support you with that falsehood. But if you come with the truth saying, hey, we the Israelites and we broke covenant for Egyptian religion, and that's what caused the transatlantic slave trade, because we left the promised land and went into Africa by way of Egypt to do their religions. Then the Israelite gonna scratch his head and he gonna turn his back from you and walk, cause that's not what they want to hear. They don't want to hear the truth, man, and that our people love lies. Man, they love lies, man. I'm talking about, man, if you tell a lie, then you okay to an Israelite. If you murdering, you stealing, and you lying, and you being dishonest, Israelites like you, man, and they support that. They support that wholeheartedly with their whole heart. But if you telling the truth and you just showing us one Yah and we in slavery and went into captivity, man, because we abandoned our Yah that stood for truth, justice, and righteousness, then the Israelite gonna get away from you. They don't want nothing to do with you. They don't want nothing to do with you, and how that they only support lies. Now, there's some Israelites still believe in that 10 lost tribes doctrine. Now, man, I scratch my head and say, man, how in the world could they still believe in the 10 lost tribes doctrine when the Tanakh show explicitly that, we was at home during the Syrian times. And it's even verses in the Tanakh, man, that showed that the Assyrians, they attacked us because the northern kingdom was on false worship, and Almighty Yah sent them to get us, especially the three tribes, Reuben, Gad, and Manasseh, that was like the fighters, and they were stationed throughout the northern kingdom. The northern kingdom had garrisons and armies in different little spots throughout the northern kingdom, and then that's who the Assyrians came and snatched up. And that how that you can easily see that it wasn't any 10 lost tribes. And then if you go to the book of Isaiah that was written in 734 to 701 BCE, you'll see that he even said that, the Assyrians would, be on our side as well as the Egyptians. And that prophecy come to pass during what is called the Satai history, when Assyria came and conquered Egypt, or will really align themselves with the Egyptians, which was in, I think, 673 BCE to 663 BCE, and then, that it never was any 10 lost tribes, because it don't make no sense for the Assyrians to be at line with us in their last days. And then we know that prophet Nahum prophesies the destruction of Assyria, and he was around in 697 BCE, and this was like 6 years before the Assyrians aligned themselves with the Egyptians, or took Egypt over in what's called the Satai history. You know, it was one of the Satai kings, Necho, that killed King Josiah after he cleaned the Egyptian religion up, which history show you that all the tribes were still at home. You know, because King Josiah's history go to 640 to 601 BCE, and that, you know, when the Egyptians killed him, that, you know, they put his son Jehoiakim on the throne that did the Egyptian religion, and then, you know, man, all hell broke loose, man, and then we was driven into the Africa, you know, driven off the promised land for doing false religion. Like I say, Israelites love falsehood, and then you can look throughout Tanakh history, and especially in the book of Jeremiah, how we was told over and over and over, y'all leave it Egyptian stuff alone and leave the false gods alone, and stop robbing and killing each other, and let's live righteously. But like I say, Israelites, man, they don't want to live righteous, man, and how we gravitate towards lies, man, and lies, you know, it is, you know, we think is better for us, you know. But I want to show some of this history, man, and I believe that I'll start with Prophet Isaiah, because in 734 to 701 BCE, this is like 28 years, man, before the Assyrians come into Egypt and align themselves with them, you know. And what people don't know is, like, during that time, that that it was like a slick race war going on, and that the Babylonians and the Chaldeans, you know, and those folks were held in subjection to Assyria. You know, Ashkenazi under the name Scythian, man, they was up in the Caucasus Mountain up in these parts, man, and Assyria in slick had them folks under yoke, but Assyria had them under yoke, and Assyria was like right over here in these parts right here. They was like in these parts right here. The Assyrians was, and you know, they had the folks in the Caucasus Mountain under the yoke, and then that's what turned the events for so-called black folks, is when that, you know, when we Israelites went to Egyptian religion and worship and start doing that stuff, that the whole so-called pigmented race start to become undone, and you know, because the Israelites broke the covenant and ran into Africa, that we exposed them Hamites to the troubles that they have or been having right now to this day. Now, we Israelites were removed from Africa. It took 275 years to remove us by ship to captivity over here, you know what I'm saying, in the West. But I want to show a little of this, you know, and then I want to start with Isaiah, but let me go to Second Chronicles, man. I think that's Second Chronicles, that'll be 5, I think. And then I want to show us Israelites, you know, still in the land, and then how that, you know, that the Assyrians came and took the fighters. You know, matter of fact, I turned to it. That'd be First Chronicles. Look here, I turn right to this. Look, so the Yah of Israel aroused the spirit of King Paul of Assyria. Look, of Assyria. The spirit of Talikplasner of Assyria, and he carried them away, namely the Reubenites, the Gadites, and the half tribe of Manasseh, and brought them to Hala and Hara in the river Gonzan. So those Israelites were taken off the promised land because they was protecting that Egyptian religion in the northern kingdom. The southern kingdom was the tribe of Judah, and we mostly stuck to Yah worship. We followed the footsteps of our father David, and we stayed on Yah worship. But the northern kingdom went to Egyptian religion when Jeroboam brung the Egyptian religion that Is Horus, the Queen of Heaven, is the same in root of Christianity. Christianity could not exist if it wasn't for the Is Horus religion that come from Egypt. Even though they done cleaned it up and done put it in a religious form and then attached it to our history through what's called the New Testament. But it's the same if you trace its origin, no matter how innocent they make the story seem, is that it's the same as Is Horus, and it comes from Egypt when the Greeks was in Egypt. And then, they developed that Is Horus religion and turned it into the Madonna and Child. And then from the Madonna, the mother worship and son worship, then it fragmented, and then you get the Baptist, Methodist, and all those false religions that come off it. But you can't tell an Israelite this because he's not going to believe it, and he's not going to research it, and he's going to accept all the traditions that we got from slavery. Christianity was put on us in slavery days, and then you have some stubborn Israelites that are that they don't want to hear this truth because they like lies and they like to be told lies, and it's just the way our people is. But judgment is coming soon, and you're not gonna see now demigod coming out the sky to save you, and that how you is not saved from your sins. You are not saved from your sins because nobody died for your sins. It don't make no sense for somebody to go die for your sins and then you constantly sinning over and over and over. Then they died in vain. And that the world is in a worse state today by those religions that teach people falsehood that somebody done died from their sins. Man, America is the most wickedest nation on the face of this earth. And no other nation is more wicked than America is by comparison. And that's because that false doctrine lead this nation and so forth. And it was forced on us Israelites in the slavery days. But like I say, an Israelite don't want to believe that, and he's not going to accept that. And he's only going to accept, what his mother and father had taught them, who go back to their mother and father, that go all the way back to the slavery days when it was forced on us. A lot of Israelites don't want to believe that our parents, didn't know the truth at the time, but that how we are blessed, man, to where that we can seek out the truth and find the truth and embrace the truth. But like I say, most Israelites, they not gonna do that, and that how that falsehood is, what they prefer is nicer and it feels good to them. Like I say, man, I could have a big old church. I could be dancing around and sliding across the floor and got my jaws poked out and preaching falsehood. But I chose to, show the truth out of the Tanakh, our only heritage and our true history. All right, I just showed where the tribe of Reuben, Gad, and Manasseh was snatched up by the Egyptian. I mean by the Assyrians, and that those tribes were stationed throughout the northern kingdom because it was garrisons everywhere. That's like a little small army outlet put here and there strategically in the land because we had enemies all around us and so forth. And the king, he just wasn't gonna have all his soldiers in one spot, and how he'll have garrisons everywhere. And that Reuben, Gad, and Manasseh was the trained fighters, men in our land. They was the trained fighters, man. I think if let me see, man, if I could pull that up. Let me pull that up. Man, how they was the fighters, man. They didn't get down fighting. Let me see. All right. Yes, all right. Here it is. All right. See, the Reubenites, the Gadites, and the half tribe of Manasseh had warriors who carried shields and sword and drew the bow and were experienced at war. They was 44,760 ready for service. Now those are the ones that the Assyrians needed because when the Syrians got in trouble for having these folks under yoke, the Caucasus Mountain, Ashkenazi and them had them under yoke, man, in the Caucasus Mountain, man, in these parts, making them, in the slaves and so forth. That how those folks rebelled, and I believe that Assyria could have lasted longer, but it had the wicked Israelite army that did the Egyptian religion, man, amongst them. Now, man, I can show how if you read Prophet Jonah's history, how those Assyrians at one time believed in Yah, because how Jonah went there, man, and the king told the whole nation to straighten up, because this prophet was pronouncing destruction on them, and how everybody put sackcloth on. He made everybody put sackcloth on and put ashes on, and that was, I think, 760 or 740 BCE, and that how they believed in Yah. But then a few years later, I think 722 BC, when the kings of Assyria were starting to have a little trouble, that they went and got the Israelites that did Egyptian religion, Reuben, Gad, and Manasseh, and incorporated them into their army, which, from our enemies having our history and converting folks all around the world, that they created that 10 lost tribes doctrine. They created that 10 lost tribes doctrine. And we can go to let's go to let's go to King Hezekiah history. Man, that'd be 715. And matter of fact, I just opened it to knock up from a whole lot of pages and books and turned right to it. I turned right to it, man. This would be 2nd Chronicles 30. And this is in 715 BCE. This is like 7 years after the so-called Assyrian captivity, where the folks try to lie and say that 10 tribes was taken when it wasn't 10 tribes. Because if you look at King Hezekiah history, and this was like maybe 100 years, man, before the Assyrians get completely annihilated, and it was like a few years from Prophet Nahum in 674, giving the pronunciation of the Assyrian Empire being completely destroyed, and then it come about in 612 BCE is what they call the Battle of Nineveh. I'm gonna see if I can find that, the Battle of Nineveh. Here it is, right here, the Battle of Nineveh, and then this is when Assyria was completely destroyed. Matter of fact, they was annihilated, ethnically cleansed, and then all those that didn't get into Africa and hide were completely destroyed. Completely destroyed. And remember, this prophet Nahum give the prophecy man man before it, come to pass, about 60 some years or something like that. I think maybe 65 years or 66 years, man, 67 years, man, before it happened. And then it eventually happened. If you read Nahum, and then you come back and study this history, his prophecy caused Nineveh to be destroyed. And it was because, they had the fighters that, was on Egyptian religion, that false religion, in their army, in their ranks. Now, if you read the book of Jonah, you're going to see how the Syrians believed in Yah. Man, at one time, it's how Prophet Jonah went there, and then they put on sackcloth and did what he said, because destruction, was coming up on them. And then how the prophet Nahum come back later on and prophesied their destruction, because they had the northern kingdom in their army. And we couldn't be on falsehood. That's like now, man, we in terrible trouble now because we're on falsehood. Our people embrace falsehood over truth. Now look here. All right, let's go to 2 Chronicles 30. And look, Hezekiah sent word to all Israel. Look, Hezekiah sent word to all Israel and Judah. And he also wrote letters to Ephraim and Manasseh to come to the house of the Elohim. Now, it was half tribe of Ephraim, one on the east side of the Jordan and one on the west side with the rest of the tribes. And this was the ones that was left on the west side that was, close to his brother Ephraim. Look, Hezekiah sent word to all Israel and Judah. He also wrote letters to Ephraim and Manasseh to come to the house of the Elohim in Jerusalem to keep the Passover. For the Elohim Yah of Israel, the king and his officers in the congregation in Jerusalem had agreed to keep the Passover in the second month. For at that time they were unable to keep it, for not enough priests had sanctified themselves, nor had the people assembled in Jerusalem. The king and the whole congregation thought it proper to issue a decree and proclaim throughout all Israel, from Beersheba to Dan. Now let's look where Beersheba to Dan is, because it wouldn't make no sense for King Hezekiah to call the peoples if they was gone during Assyrian times, and Assyria had took them 7 years before then. Now look here, there go Beersheba, all the way up there to Dan. Now this is the Manasseh, that the half of the tribe that was on this side, and it was this side that had snatched away by the king of Assyria and incorporated them into his army. Reuben, Gad, and Manasseh. As I just showed that they was the fighters, and that we had been on Egyptian religion in the northern kingdom since 931 BCE. So it wouldn't make no sense for King Hezekiah in 715 BCE to send a letter to get the tribes to come to Jerusalem for the Passover if they was gone. Now you can see right there that X out that 10 lost tribes doctrine. That X out the 10 lost tribes doctrine. Now during the Babylonian Wars, all the tribes went south and started to go into Africa, and only the tribe of Judah was mentioned because the monarchy, the leaders was taken away. They was taken away. The Assyrians snatched up the leaders of the army and the king Hoshea during that time, and then took them away. You know, they got monuments and things of that. You know what I'm saying? That exists, showing this, and then also showing what they look like. All right, look. So the king and the whole congregation thought it was proper to issue a decree and proclaim throughout all Israel from Beersheba to Dan that they come to the come and keep the Passover for the Elohim Yah of Israel in Jerusalem. Not often did they act in accordance with what was written. The carriers went out with the letters from the king and his officers throughout all Israel and Judah. Look, through all Israel and Judah. Now, if all Israel was gone and then just Judah was left during the Assyrian times, that they would be making this into a lie and falsehood. But we know that this is not falsehood and that this is true and correct, and that the history that others have wrote about our heritage is false. All right, with the letters from the king and his officers throughout all Israel and Judah, and by order of the king proclaiming, O ye Israelites, return to the Elohim Yah of your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, and he will return to the remain of you who escaped from the hand of the kings of Assyria. Look, you see that right there? Who escaped? Who escaped from the hand of the kings of Syria. Do not be like your fathers and brothers who trespass against the Elohim Yah or their fathers and return them into hard. You know what I'm saying? The Creator turned them into hard. And against the Elohim and turned them into hard, as you see. Now do not be stiff-necked like your fathers, and submit yourselves to the Elohim and come to the sanctuary which he consecrated forever, and serve the Elohim your Yah, so that his anger may turn back from you. If you return to the Elohim, your brothers and children will be regarded with compassion by their captors and will return to this land, for the Elohim your Yah is gracious and merciful, and he will not turn his face from you if you return to him. As the couriers passed from town to town in the land of Ephraim, Manasseh, till they reached Zebulun, they were laughed at and mocked. Some of the people of Asher and Manasseh and Zebulun, however, were contrite and came to Jerusalem. The hand of Yah was on Judah to make them of a single mind. You know, see, they was at home. They was at home, and then as you read it, you know what I'm saying, he gonna mention me and some more tribes. So how in the world is they gone during Assyrian times when this was after? You know, this was after the so-called Assyrian captivity. And then if you go to King Hezekiah's great grandson, be King Josiah, you'll see that he cleaned the whole Israel up. He cleaned the whole Israel up, and now just show that from Beersheba to Dan, how King Hezekiah sent for the people, sent the letters throughout them parts for the people to come home. So how is it any 10 lost tribes during them times? That's a lie. You know, look, this is in 640 BCE. Josiah was 8 years old when he became king, and he reigned 31 years in Jerusalem, and he did what was pleasing to the Elohim, following the ways of his father David, without deviating to the right or to the left. And in the 8th year of his reign, while he was still young, he began to seek the Elohim of his father David. And in the 12th year, he began to purge Jerusalem, Judah, and Jerusalem of the shrines, the scary posts, the idols, and the molten images,
And at his bidding they demolished the altar of Baal, and he had the incense stands above them cut down, and he smashed the scared posts, the idols, and the images, and ground them into dust, and strewed it upon the graves of those who had sacrificed to them. And he burnt the bones of the priests on their altar, and purged Judah and Jerusalem in the towns of Manasseh, Ephraim, and Simon. Look, as far as Naphtali. Look, so let's see what he cleaned up. Now, it wouldn't make no sense to clean the land up and all the folks gone. And then he did it from Simon. Look, from Simon all the way to Naphtali right there. See what I'm saying? So he didn't say that he cleaned this side up where the Reubenites and the Gadites and the tribe of Manasseh gone, but that he cleaned this side up, the west side of the Jordan up, and that he didn't clean that east side up because wasn't nobody there. So it don't same with King Hezekiah, that he didn't send a letter to these parts, and how he sent the letter from Beersheba all the way up there, because that's where we were. You know, and those tribes, look, Zebulun, Ishkar, Manasseh, and Ephraim, and Benjamin, and, you know, Simon, and all them was split at home. So when they come with that 10 lost tribe stuff, they telling a lie. They lying. They telling a lie. And if you Israelites believe in the 10 lost tribes, it's like y'all believe in that Santa Claus stuff and the stuff that they gave us during the transatlantic slave trade. But look here, all right, in the towns of Manasseh, Ephraim, and Simon, as far as Naphtali Lane, in the ruins on every side, he demolished the altars and the scared posts, and smashed the idols, and ground them into dust. And he hewed down all the incense stands throughout the land of Israel. Now he didn't say Judah, he said the land of Israel. Then he returned to Jerusalem. And in the 18th year after he purged the land, you see, so he did, look, and there go Benjamin and Ephraim, look. In the governor's city, Joash records to repair the house of the Elohim, and they come to the high priest Hezekiah and deliver him the silver brought to the house of Yah, which the Levites, the guards, the threshold had collected from Manasseh, Ephraim, and from all the remain of Israel, and from all Judah, Benjamin, the inhabitants from Jerusalem. See, them Israelites were at home, and we know that King Josiah didn't have any trouble with the Assyrians because they was being destroyed along with Reuben, Gad, and Manasseh that was in the Assyrian army. But if you go to Isaiah, let's go to Prophet Isaiah history, and then this would be in man around about 701 or 28 years, man, before the Assyrians conquered Egypt, as he prophesies that, you see, that the history that the Israelites been using with their 10 lost tribes is incorrect. See, look, this is Prophet Isaiah. And it's going to be around about 734 to 701. But it was like 28 years, man, before the Assyrians came into Egypt and got with them to get out of the wrath of Ashkenazi, finna extinct them, because prophet Nahum had prophesied Nineveh's destruction, which was the capital of Assyria. Look, in that day there shall be a highway from Egypt to Assyria. The Assyrians shall join with the Egyptians, and the Egyptians with the Assyrians, and then the Egyptians together with the Assyrians shall serve the Elohim. And in that day Israel shall be a third partner with Egypt and Assyria as a blessing on earth. For the Elohim of hope will bless them, saying, blessed be my people Egypt, the work of my Egypt, my handiwork Assyria, and my very own Israel. Now, if you go to the book of Jonah, man, let's see if we can find the book of Jonah real quick. And then if you go to the book of Jonah, you're going to see that, the Assyrians believed in Almighty Yah. So, this history that we've been taught by others about our heritage is completely wrong. It's completely wrong. Now, let's go and find this here. And I'm going to show y'all. All right, look, this is Jonah. This is 760 BCE. So this like, a few years. Look, the word of the Elohim came to Jonah, and go at once to Nineveh, that great city, and proclaim judgment upon it, for their wickedness had come before me. And Jonah, however, we know that he didn't go, and that he got in the boat and tried to dip and go somewhere else because he wanted them to get destroyed. He wanted them to get destroyed. They hadn't kidnapped the northern kingdom yet. So, they was following Almighty Yah. The Assyrians was, but when they had kidnapped the northern kingdom in 722 BC, and then like a few years after that, Nahum come with the judgment because the northern kingdom was there. They couldn't be up off the promised land doing Egyptian religion, couldn't be on the land doing Egyptian religion. That's why they had the trouble. But as you read Jonah, you're going to get to, how, he walked through the land. He walked through the land, and then how did that the folks changed their ways. Look, the Elohim provided huge fish, and then got him, and then, he brought him up to life, and then, all right, the word of the Elohim came to Jonah a second time. Go at once to Nineveh, that great city, and proclaim to it what I tell you. And Jonah went at once to Nineveh in accordance with the Elohim's command. Nineveh was an enormously large city, 3 days walk across. Jonah started out and made his way into the city, the distance of 1 day's walk, and proclaimed 40 days more, and Nineveh shall be overthrown. The people of Nineveh believed Yah. Look, you see that? Look, the people of Nineveh believed Yah. They proclaimed they fast, and the great and small alike put on sackcloth. And man, they put on sackcloth. And had a fast, and great and small alike put on sackcloth when the news reached the king of Nineveh. And he arose from his throne and took off his robe and put on sackcloth and sat in ashes. And he had the word cried through, Nineveh by decree of the king and his nobles. No man or beast or flock or herd shall taste anything. They shall not graze, and they shall not drink water. They shall be covered with sackcloth, man and beast, and cry, and shall cry mightily to Yah. And let everyone turn back from his evil ways and from the injustice of which he is guilty. And who knows but that Yah may turn and relent, and may turn back his wrath from us, so that we do not perish. And Yah saw that they did how they were to turning back from their evil, and Yah renounced the punishment he had planned to bring upon them. You see right there. So they believed in Yah in 760 BCE. But then when they went and got the northern kingdom, Reuben, Gad, and Manasseh, and incorporated them into their army, this what came to pass. This what come to pass, man. If you read Nahum, look, this is in it's about 80 some years. Look, Nahum, man, pronounce a pronouncement on Nineveh. The book of the prophecy of Nahum. The Elohim is passionate and avenging Yah. The Elohim is vengeful and furious in wrath. The Elohim take vengeance on his enemies. He rages against his foes. The Elohim is slow to anger and of great forbearance. But the Elohim does not remit all punishment. He travels in the whirlwind and storm, and clouds are the dust on his feet. He rebukes the sea and dries it up, and he makes all rivers fail. Bashan, Carmel languish, and the blossom of Lebanon wither. The mountains quake because of him, and the hills, the earth haves in before him, and the world and all that dwell therein. Who can stand before his wrath? Who can resist his fury? And anger pours out like fire, and rocks are shattered because of him. The Elohim is good to those who hope in him, and a haven a day of distress. He is mindful in those who seek refuge in him, and with a sweeping flood he make an end of her place. So Nineveh had the northern kingdom army in them, Reuben, Gad, and Manasseh, like I showed, and chose and chase his enemy into the darkness. Why will you plot against the Elohim? He wreaks utter destruction. No adversary oppose him twice. For like men be slaughtered with drink, they are burnt up like tangled thorns, like straw that is thoroughly dried. The base of the plotter, you know what I'm saying? But as you go on, man, you know what I'm saying? Look, he talk about their destruction. Look, for the Elohim has restored the pride, and when the pride of Israel through marauders have laid them waste and ravaged their branches. Look, but he go on and pronounce Nineveh's destruction, and Nineveh was destroyed. Nineveh was destroyed, but we know before then, you know, because they worship Almighty Yah, that prophet Isaiah said that they'll be able to get off men into Egypt. The ones that probably believed and so forth. And then, you know, that's what happened. And then we know that Necho, King Necho, came out to man to help the Assyrians. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna see if I could pull that up. Man, that'd be second Kings, I think. Second Kings. Let's see if I can get the pull Second Kings up. Yeah, man, they came out to help the Assyrians in their last days. You know, everybody was messing over us, trying to pull us one way or the other way. As long as we didn't do the covenant and we was on falsehood, that everybody was, you know, trying to destroy us because they know that we had a personal relationship, you know what I'm saying, with Almighty Yah. Man, we had a personal relationship with Almighty Yah. Alright, let's go to Second Kings. It'd be 7. Yeah, man, the history that everybody else teach about Israelite history, man, is false. It's false. And that what I'm showing, man, is the truth, you know. And that it's easy to see this truth, what I'm showing, that all you got to do is study the Tanakh history and know some dates. You know some dates, man. Let's go to 2 Kings 23, I think. Yeah, so you know the history that we got, man, about man, the history that we have, man, about the Israelite heritage, man, is false. It's false, and that, you know, I'm gonna show you the real. All right, let's go. Let's do it in here. 2 Kings. Gotta be 2 Kings 23, 34. All right, look. Start at 29 to 2 Kings 23, and I'm gonna be at 29. In his days, Pharaoh Necho, king of Egypt, went to the king of Assyria to the river Euphrates, and King Josiah went against him, and he slew him at Medigo. Now that's after King Josiah and then cleaned the Egyptian religion up. That the Egyptians used that as a slick excuse to get rid of him, and then the Egyptians would put Josiah's son Jehoiakim on the throne because the Egyptians took Jehoaz and took him to Egypt, I think. Look, all right. And his servants carried him. That's King Josiah, you know what I'm saying? And they buried him. And the people of the land took Jehoaz, the son of Josiah, and anointed him and made him king in his father's stead. And Jehoaz went 20, and Joaz was 23 years old when he began to reign in 3 months in Jerusalem. And his mother's name was Hamutal, the daughter of Jeremiah of Libnah. And he did that which was evil in the sight of the Elohim according to all that, and Pharaoh Necho put him in bands at Riblah in the land of Hamath, that he might not reign in Jerusalem, and put the land to a tribute of 100 talents of silver and a talent of gold. And Pharaoh Necho made Eliakim the son of Joash king in the room of Josiah his father, and turned his name to Jehoiakim, and took Jehoaz away and came to Egypt, and he died there. And Jehoiakim gave the silver and the gold to Pharaoh, who taxed us and stuff. You see, so he was trying to pay for that army and keep them horses and chariots going and so forth. So all this stuff, man, that they say about Israelite heritage and the 10 lost tribes is a lie. And I'm just basically broke it down the way that it was in real history and so forth. And then, we would go into Africa to do the Egyptian religion when Jehoiakim was put on the throne, and then Almighty Yah made the Ashkenazi, that was called the Chaldeans. They were Scythians, and they made up the Babylonian army, and then they would come and chase us out of Africa. Chase us out the promised land into Africa, because we was doing the Egyptian religion. And then you can see that in the book of Jeremiah, man, around about 44, 43, 44, when we went into Egypt and left the promised land, and then how we never come back, and how the transatlantic slave trade got us. The transatlantic slave trade got us for doing the Egyptian religion, because we couldn't leave it alone. Man, we had been on Egyptian religion, man, about a good 300-400 years. And about the same amount of time that we have been in captivity here in America was the same amount of time that we was on that Egyptian religion. And then that what destroyed us. If you go to let's see what Jeremiah 37 got down here. I got this down here for a reason. That's what destroyed us, man, is that we went into Africa to do the Egyptian religion after going through all the stuff that we had been through, and that we should have known better and so forth. We should have known better, man, and we even told a lie going into Africa when Jeremiah told us to come back home. Don't go into Africa to live, and then Almighty Yah say he gonna turn the heart of Ashkenazi, who was called the Chaldeans, and that they ain't gonna be so brutal to us. And that we said, no, y'all didn't say that, and that it was good for us to go into Egypt, so we don't have to hear no war, man, and none of that stuff. Let me see, it'll be Jeremiah 37. Let's see what it say. Alright. Jeremiah 37. Jeremiah 37:7. Let's see. And all right. Then the word of the Elohim, this is Jeremiah 37. Then the word of the Elohim came to prophet Jeremiah, saying, This said the Elohim Yah Israel, this shall ye say to the king of Judah, who sent you to me to inquire of me, the army of Pharaoh, which is set out to help you, will return to his own land, to Egypt, and the Chaldeans, who was Ashkenaz, will come back and attack this city, and they will capture it and destroy it by fire. You know, and that happened. That happened. That happened. Let's see, Jeremiah 26. What I got there. That happened. And we all messed up, man, the way that they've been writing history, trying to keep us out of heritage and so forth, and then how you Israelites like to believe in lies. You know that 10 lost tribe thing is a lie. Alright, did this let me see. There was also a man prophesizing in the name of the Elohim, Uriah, son of Shemi from Kerith Jearim, who prophesied against this city in this land, the same thing as Jeremiah, King Jehoiakim, and all his warriors and all the officials heard about his address, and the king wanted to put him to death. And Uri heard of this and fled in fear and come to Egypt. But King Jehoiakim sent men to Egypt, Elathan, son of Achabar, and men with him to Egypt, and they took Uri out of Egypt and brought him to the king Jehoiakim, who had him put to the sword, and his body was thrown in the burial place of the common people. Yeah, man, so we was all messed up. You know, we was on that Egyptian religion, and that Egyptian religion got with us being involved with the people. Now they could have worshipped that stuff by themselves. They could have worshipped that stuff by themselves and probably would have been all right, like the wicked people is today. But if an Israelite worshiping it with them during the time that we were supposed to be on the covenant and on the land, that's gonna destroy them people and destroy their nation. And then that's what happened. You know, that's like now with these wicked Israelites in America that believe in these false doctrines, these demigod doctrines. They finna destroy America. America's gonna get destroyed because of these Israelites here, you know, doing these false doctrines. Wherever we go and do false doctrines, that nation shall be destroyed. That's one of the reasons why America should kick us out and send us back to the promised land, because they ain't gonna make it, you know, after we done been punished, and we supposed to turn back to Yah and learn our heritage and learn the truth about our history and who we are. And because the Israelites are blindsided that America's finna fall before long, finna fall because of these wicked Israelites, man, that's in it that love lies. You know, we supposed to serve Yah, and our whole essence and everything is supposed to serve Almighty Yah. But you know, these Israelites refuse to do it because they love to be lied to, like Jeroboam brung that Egyptian religion out on us, and how the Israelites, you know, gravitated towards that and was cool with that. And then what happened? Destruction. I mean, we only got one purpose in life, man. That's to serve Almighty Yah. Now let's go back to man. If I was teaching lies, man, saying that a demigod coming to save us and we going to heaven and all that old stuff, and let's go to church and Jesus and all that, man, I would be in the building right now teaching you Israelites, and you Israelites will be able to come and hang out with me. But because I'm teaching the truth, and Israelites do not like listening to the truth, or being nowhere near the truth, that I'm sitting at, you know, in this place, in this room, teaching to you. You know, it's awful, but that's the way it is. You know, I pray Almighty y'all make some change for me, and that, you know, we able to get together and study under one building and study our heritage correctly.
This is a message from the Israelite Brotherhood, man, and I pray that you Israelites understood some of this history that I tried to show. It's the way that it went, and it's the way that it's showing in the Tanakh. So, we're going to have truth dealing with the Israelite Brotherhood at all costs. You going to get the truth, and that I'm not finna sell you out. I'm not finna sell you out for no riches and for anything and for no money, and then how I'm gonna stick by the truth, showing our heritage. All right, Israelites, Israelites love to be lied to, but the Israelite Brotherhood ain't finna lie to you. I'm gonna show you straight up what happened to us. This is a message from the Israelite Brotherhood.